Welcome to City Inside Out. I'm your host, Brian Callanan. This year's presidential election marks a turning point in U.S. politics. Plus, a crowded local ballot will mean leadership and possibly policy changes in Olympia and Seattle.
God bless you and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
In a stunning comeback, Donald Trump is president once again, with a wave of Republican support across the country. Washington state races are tilting in the other direction.
I'm running for governor to fix what's wrong and do what's right.
It won't be easy, but I've never been satisfied with the status quo.
Democrat Attorney General Bob Ferguson won the governor's seat over his Republican opponent, former U.S. Congressman Dave Reichert. But Democrats could face some challenges from a series of statewide initiatives.
Initiative 2066 ensures natural gas remains an option.
I-2066, which would stop local governments from banning or discouraging the use of natural gas, had a 51 to 49% lead on election night. The three other initiatives, which would have ended the capital gains tax and Climate Commitment Act, and would have allowed state residents to opt out of long-term care insurance, have failed.
We need to get past ideological theories.
And I've built a reputation for getting things done.
For the Seattle City Council's citywide Position 8 seat, Alexis Mercedes Rink took a strong early lead over incumbent Tanya Wu. And voters have said yes, full speed ahead to a transportation levy that's the largest in city history.
My job is done.
What message are voters sending at the city, state, and national levels?
This year of the woman turned out to be the year of the man.
Yeah.
Our panel of election experts weighs in.
This is a very partisan election.
I do think that if I was on the current council, I'd be a little worried.
A look at early election returns, next on City Inside Out. And welcome once again to City Inside Out. I'm Brian Callanan with you, and I have a group here that can add a lot of perspective to these early election returns, including David Horsey, editorial cartoonist for the Seattle Times. David, great to see you.
Good to see you.
And here we go with Erica C. Barnett. She's also here, publisher and editor of Publicola. Erica, great to see you too.
Great to see you.
And also with us, Stuart Elway. Yes, it is that Stuart Elway. He's been conducting public opinion research since 1975. Stuart, thanks a lot for being here.
Great to be here.
All right, let's do this thing. David, I wanted to show our viewers one of your editorial cartoons from the Seattle Times. It's been a yo-yo of emotions over the past several weeks in looking at polling numbers, but it looks like that yo-yoing has finally come to rest. Donald Trump is going to be our 47th president. What thoughts do you have about that?
Well, yeah, the yo-yoing was apparent with all my friends who were just up and down. And the phrase Democrats finally settled on, I think, was nauseously optimistic.
Right. Well,
now we're just nauseous.
Okay.
It's funny. This always was a very possible result, but I think people, there was a lot of denial because it was like, we had 4 years of this. Can we possibly go through another 4? And apparently we're going to find out.
We are indeed.
Well, now, last night, Jon Stewart on the Daily Show had a segment where he showed the prognostication of famous pundits through several election cycles, all of which were wrong. So anything we say today,
I guess,
yeah, you never know for sure. But my guess is this is going to be the first term on steroids.
Okay. You'll have plenty of things to draw, I would imagine that. Erica, I wanted to borrow an opening line from one of your recent stories on Publicola, which says, "The dreaded presidential election is finally upon us." And I've heard so many similar sentiments from people, this unease or anxiety about the 2024 elections. Before we jump into the local issues, is that sense of dread gone now that the presidential election is over? What are you feeling?
Well, it's interesting. I want to actually quote really quickly from something that Josh Marshall wrote on Talking Points Memo. He said, "There is clarity in this result. This is who we are." And he wrote a great piece about it. And I think that sense of dread is gone, because we know that this is who the majority of Americans, at least Americans who vote, are. They want this. They know they're going into this clear-eyed. They know who Donald Trump is. They know what he will do and what he has promised. And they've said, yeah, we want that. And so I think that removing that sense of dread, is you know, maybe a tiny silver lining. We know what we have to do now, and it's not debate, you know, whether Kamala Harris ran a good or bad campaign. It's not, you know, having riots in the streets. It's not, you know, protesting, you know, having a back and forth about whether the vote was legitimate. I mean, this is a mandate. And so I think that clarity is a tiny silver lining.
Okay, all right. I thank you for that. Stuart, I just wanted to ask you, so many national polls showed this dead heat in the presidential race, but it really appears to be a landslide win for Trump. It looks like he'll win the popular vote. Republicans will control the House and Senate. What do you make of what happened?
Well, it couldn't have gotten any closer. Mathematically, it wasn't possible for the polls. But because the national and the 7 swing states were all within 1 or 2 points, which is margin of error stuff. And it was always possible, and they were talking about that the swings could all go one way or the other or anything in between. Well, they all went one way, and it's not the way that people around here thought it was going to go.
Yeah. Did it surprise you at all?
Yeah, I did, because I really thought that it wouldn't. The odds of all the swing states going one way or the other was pretty high.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and you know, the other thing is Clallam County lost its bellwether status. It was the last county in the country to get the presidential race right the last 10 elections, and they went for Kamala last night. So.
I'm sorry about that, Clallam County.
I know.
Stuart, maybe I can stay with you.
Sure.
No surprises in our state in the governor's race, I guess. Attorney General Bob Ferguson had a big lead early, never lost it. Dave Reichert, really this race was decided before election night, it seemed like. And your poll showed it seems people really stuck to party lines in our state.
This was a very partisan election. You ask people, how would you register to vote? Which I do in my polls. We don't in the state, but I ask them that in the polls. And then I ask the independents, how do you typically vote? More Democrat or more Republican? There's a 17-point gap favoring Democrats in this state over the last several years. You go from our votes in this across the last night, President, Senate, Governor, Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor, all the way down to Insurance Commissioner, all those were within a couple of points of that 17-point gap.
Wow.
It looks like, I got it here, it looks like the same chart all the way across.
Huh.
The only one that's different is Lands Commissioner. It's a little closer, 6-point gap right now. And who knows, there's still as many as 1 million votes to count.
Okay. Well,
and in that race,
yeah, please.
I think the only reason the Republican candidate did a little better is because she was actually anti-Trump in the sense she voted
Jamie Herrera Butler voted
made her much more appealing.
She got bonus points for
Dan Newhouse, though, looks like he has a lead after.
Yeah, but
and he's the other person that voted to impeach Trump in our state. David, I wanted to jump back to the governor's race and illustrate the point. You see what I did there, if I may, with one of your cartoons here, because I thought this was interesting. Back in August, you had this cartoon here, a nod to maybe the Olympic equestrian competition. You're making the point that Reichert really couldn't overcome being tied to the Trump campaign, which was thoroughly unpopular in this state, maybe not nationwide. What's your take on the governor's race going to Ferguson?
Yeah, well, I don't think there was ever any doubt. I mean, 2 years ago, I think you could have said he's the guy that will come through. And, you know, Tip O'Neill famously said back in the olden days of politics that all politics is local. It's not true anymore. All politics is national. That was driven by national politics as much as any other race. Reichert, the stuff he was running on, really wasn't policy or anything. It was, you know, crime and all these scary issues that Republicans are using everywhere.
Right.
But because of that gap in this state and the power of especially King County to dominate the state politics, he never had a chance. I mean, I think he's the best possible Republican candidate.
Right. But
there were a lot crazier people. But
maybe I can get some thoughts from you, Erica. All these state executive offices were up for grabs this year. It looks like Democrats are in the lead. Democrat Dave Updegrove barely made it out of the primary, but he was up against the former Congresswoman Jamie Herrera Butler. Were there any surprises for you when it came to the state races?
Well, if we can go to the initiatives for a second, I would say that, you know, the routing of 3 of the 4 Brian Haywood-backed initiatives, the carbon pricing, long-term care.
Allow me. So I'm talking about 2117 would gut the Climate Commitment Act, take away the carbon tax credit system. That failed. 2109 would end the capital gains tax. That failed. 2124 would allow residents a choice to participate in our state's long-term care insurance program. Advocates say that would effectively end that program. That measure failed too. The one that did at least have a lead on election night was 2066, which would stop local governments from banning or discouraging the use of natural gas. That did have a slim lead. Just wanted to make sure I have that background.
Thank you.
Please
no, that's much better than I would have described it. So I do think, I mean, that was a body blow to those initiatives. And I mean, I don't remember exactly how many millions of dollars were poured into those initiatives, but I mean, the backer of them was at gas stations, giving people discounts on their gas to the national average to illustrate that the Climate Commitment Act made gas more expensive by about $0.25 a gallon, according to the state. And yet all of that failed spectacularly, and I thought that was really interesting because I don't cover state politics directly, but as a voter looking at the initiatives on the ballot, I mean, I don't think it was entirely clear what these initiatives would do, that they were bad from a progressive point of view, that they would gut all these things that we have committed to, and so, but nonetheless, voters in the state didn't fall for it and voted down those three. So that was a little bit surprising, just the margin of error on those, or the margin on those rather.
It fit into this partisan pattern.
Yeah.
This was a package of initiatives. We've never quite seen such a coherent package put forward before.
All originated by the state Republican
Party.
All
originated by the state Republican Party in an attempt to go over the head of the legislature to undo keystone programs that the Democrats passed during the legislature. And Republicans didn't like them. They couldn't stop them in the legislature. Well, let's go to the people. And they all got beat. So well, except for the one, but so it fits this whole pattern that we saw of a very Democratic partisan election across the board in Washington, in the state.
Does it chill the idea of the state Republican Party possibly doing that again, using the initiative process in this way? What do you think?
Yeah, it might. It might. And as Erica pointed out, there was a lot of money spent.
Yeah.
And they didn't come very close on three of those.
Yeah.
So they'd have to, you have to think pretty carefully about the next time you try this.
Yeah,
I thought that was especially encouraging. I thought, at one point I was convinced that the carbon initiative in particular would pass simply because it seemed like you could have such an easy sell. Hey, lower your gas price.
Vote yes, pay less.
And I thought that would appeal to across the board.
Right.
But happily, I think voters in the state seem to be a little more tuned in and intelligent than.
It took a while.
Early.
As you mentioned, they were complicated. They're all technical to start with, and they're written. Ballot titles written by lawyers, not real people.
And there was that fiscal impact statement.
And then to put that on there, and then you had to vote yes to repeal it and no to keep it. So it's very complicated. So as we're polling throughout this, you could just see people working their way through it. And it followed party lines. Republicans voted on their side on all of them. Democrats voted on their side, all of them. But there are only 5% that are undecided on all four. And as it went on, you could see that. So people were reading their voters' pamphlet and working their way through it, and they thought about these. Yeah,
David, you framed this as a vote on the initiatives here to move either forward or backward on issues like climate change, long-term care, taxing capital gains there. Backward, as you saw, it would be a yes vote on this measure here. In terms of what happened here, was it almost seemed like that Democratic versus Republican side overcame any of the pocketbook issues that voters might look at in these situations.
Yeah, and usually a simplistic sort of pocketbook appeal is pretty effective, but it seems like people went beyond that, and probably because it was such a partisan thing. Yeah, people knew where these came from. From this guy with a bunch of money who moved into the state and decided he wanted to change everything. Yeah, I'm sure there was some resentment there, but yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. I mean, it would have destroyed whatever legacy Governor Inslee, is leaving us. So I'm sure he's really happy this morning.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see where the rest of it goes. But I thank you for that, Erica. I wanted to switch gears if I could and take a look at the City Council race, citywide position 8. This is that one-year term before an election for the 4-year term in 2025. Incumbent Tanya Wu really was fighting from behind on this one since the primary here. Alexis Mercedes Rink, seen as a more progressive voice, had more than 50% of the vote in the primary, was 12 points ahead of Wu, and she only increased that lead on election night, 57 to 42%. What did you see happen on election night with this race?
Well, I was actually in the crowd at Alexis's party last night. It was a very interesting experience, just to go back briefly to the presidential race, because the presidential race results were sort of off in a corner and nobody was paying attention to them. And there was just like...
Oh, they were kind of paying attention. Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, it didn't feel that way. And there was just like absolute jubilation in the room, people screaming, people crying. I mean, so excited about her win and also about Sean Scott's win in the 43rd. And, you know, and I think rightly so, because, you know, if you look actually at election night last time, Alexis Mercedes Rink had 46%, was ahead of Tanya Wu, but not by the margin that she had last night. And I expect that will only increase the gap as it did during primary, the primary election. So, you know, I mean, I think, you know, it's just a rejection both of Tanya Wu herself, who has never been elected. She was appointed to the position after losing her last race to Tammy Morales. And, you know, and people, at least last night, were saying that they view it as a rejection of the council's current politics, which are more conservative than in the past. And so now Tammy Morales will have a progressive ally in Alexis Rink.
And a few positions are up next year. I'm thinking about the city attorney, the mayor as well, and position 9, Sarah Nelson's seat there as well. Does this bode, any thoughts about that, how this might impact those races?
Well, it's going to be a different electorate because we have odd year elections ordinarily for city council races. And of course, there is a move to push those races to even years because there's higher turnout, more people vote. So it's hard to say because it's going to be a different crowd of people. But I do think that, you know, Mercedes Rink is the youngest person ever to be elected to city council. She is, you know, proudly progressive. And this is a citywide position, so voters across the city said that this is what they want. And so I do think that if I was on the current council, I'd be a little worried because, you know, their sort of, you know, fiscal responsibility and good governance policies, you know, involve a reversal of what the previous council did. So
another yo-yo cartoon.
Yeah, right. Might be. David, you haven't drawn much about the city council recently, but any thoughts about this, bringing on possibly, it looks like Alexis Mercedes Rink, maybe the general populace is saying we need to balance this majority moderate council out with some more progressive politics?
I kind of shy away from attributing, you know, swings. I think it actually may have more to do with what Erica was mentioning, that this happened to be a big turnout election. And in this city, that tends to favor a more progressive candidate.
She had a lot of support from Democratic groups around Seattle. Too.
So, you know, everybody's out there, but that's not the case usually in the off-year elections. So I will see if it means anything other than that. Right now, that's all I would say it does mean.
Okay, I know there's a lot to look at there. Stuart, I just wanted to look at this whole concept of how divided our electorate seems to be, progressive, moderate, et cetera. And I'm just wondering how energized they are to vote. I was looking at the stats the day before Election Day. The Secretary of State's office said 2.8 million people had already cast a ballot in our state compared to 3.6 million in 2020. I just wanted to get your feeling on this. Are voters tired of the elections, feeling disenfranchised? What do you
Well, I was surprised by that, too. I was expecting the turnout 4 years ago was 84%. And I was expecting something like that. I mean, given everything that was on the ballot from top to bottom, we had all these state offices we've talked about. 4 of them were open seats.
Right.
Ordinarily, that would generate a lot of enthusiasm and excitement. And the state races just seem like sort of, you know, the opening act. The focus. This election was about Trump. Everything, and we talked earlier about this, but the Democrats have made every Republican candidate middle name is Trump.
Yeah, right.
In Washington State, and it works. It's been working. And even in our national poll, our poll on the presidential race, half the people who were voting for Kamala Harris, 50% said they were voting to keep Trump out more than to put her in. Somehow there just wasn't the same impetus. We don't know what the final turnout's going to be, but I don't think it's not going to hit that 84%.
Just if I can, do you think part of it is that everyone knew how the state was going to vote, and knew it had no effect on the electoral
I do think
college?
that's part of it. I think that the idea we've been a one-party state for so long that none of these state offices we've talked about is a surprise. And none of them was even competitive.
I mean, just to add another factor, I mean, I do think that at the national level, we can't discount the fact that people did not want to vote for a black woman. And I think that, I mean, we're always going to be, or maybe not always, but we have been for a very long time a Democratic state. The fact that, people voted, were motivated in 2020, is its own story. But I think in this case, I mean, there is a lot of sexism, there's a lot of racism, and there's a lot of just kind of passive, lack of enthusiasm for Kamala Harris that I think came out of that for a certain percentage of the electorate.
Yeah, very much a boys versus girls type of thing. And I just saw it. Ohio's one example from election night. Kamala Harris was able to get a 5% advantage in terms of the woman vote, but then Trump had a 14-point advantage when it came to the male vote. So
that was pretty true all over the country.
Yeah, it really did spin out that way.
My colleague Denny Westney,
he brought it up.
Said, this year of the woman turned out to be the year of the man.
Yeah, very much so.
Or the bro.
Yeah, I don't know if we have time to get into that one. Erica, we need to get close to wrapping up here. I did want to touch briefly on Seattle's transportation levy, largest in city history, passed on election night, 67 to 33% margin. What do those numbers tell you?
I mean, it was very interesting to see that gap because I've covered this levy in previous iterations of it in past years. I don't think it's ever been quite that wide. I could be wrong, but I mean, incredibly wide gap. Virtually no campaigning publicly, which was
Other than
also
Alex Peterson, the former council member, coming out against it.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that voters are just used to funding things this way, and there's a sense that well, if we want sidewalks, if we want bike lanes, if we want our buses to run, if we want cars to not go into potholes, we have to do this. And so I think we've just kind of aligned ourselves that way. I mean, I believe this transportation levy was first passed. It was under Nichols.
Yes,
so it's been around for a while. And
Bridging the Gap has
Bridging the Gap was the first one. And I think people are just used to it now. It wasn't a big surprise. The city budget was written to sort of assume that the levy didn't pass, but I think it was really written to assume that it did pass.
30% of the Department of Transportation's budget relies on that.
Right.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so pretty overwhelming result. I mean, we love levies, but we seem to particularly love fixing potholes.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens next with that. David, I did want to wrap up with you. You brought up the fact in a cartoon around Halloween that a second Trump term might be something to be feared. You wrote that Trump has reawakened the worst angels of our nature: misogyny, bigotry, intolerance, xenophobia. What are your concerns about a second term?
Misogyny, bigotry.
Right. Okay, I think I made the list. Yeah.
And what I think it's my biggest fear is actually less Trump than the people he's going to be bringing in that we're more on the fringes in the first term. These are people that are going to do some radical things or attempt some radical things. And
he's looking for loyalists, not people from the Republican Party.
And I think it's quite possible that given his age and his lack of energy, he'll just say he'll be happy being the king, the figurehead, and these other guys are going to go wild. The federal government is going to be chipped away at and taken apart. Foreign policy is going to be crazy. We'll be allies of Russia. And
oh, boy.
There are all sorts of fun things.
Okay, well, I'm not sure what you're going to draw next, but I can't wait to see.
The only good thing about this election is I have now just an endless supply of things to deal with.
Material for sure. Stuart, some final thoughts for you. I know some pollsters were predicting political chaos in the weeks after Election Day. I don't know what past elections have taught you here or what your thoughts are ahead. What are we going to see in the next weeks, months? What
well, I don't think we're going to have the chaos. We're not going to... Kamala's not going to file suit. She's not going to, call forth the army to storm some building. So I think there's sort of the resignation that Erica was talking about, or somehow it's taken off the anxiety because we've seen it before. We kind of know what we're in for, and right now we're just trying to imagine how bad it's really going to be.
Okay. We have a lot to imagine here over the next 4 years for sure. I thank you all for your input, and we will be right back. What are people saying on social media in the aftermath of Election Day 2024? One person writes, Democrats did everything right. Soft economic landing, massive domestic spending, dumped the old guy and got a better candidate. Spent bajillions and had a great ground game, all for nothing. Another person comments, what was that about the Democrats doing everything right? Time for them to realize where they went wrong. Start with their warmongering, then crime, then the border. We'd like to know what you think. Send us an email at contact@seattlechannel.org. Thank you for that input. Thank you all for your contributions as well. And we will see you next time on City Inside Out.